Hi, and welcome to GTV How To. This is the show where we at Goffstown Television show you a little bit about video stuff, about how things work, and how you can make better videos. And on today's episode, we're talking about cables. Isn't that fun? I'm GTV coordinator Adam McEwen, and yeah, cables everywhere. Why are there so many different kinds of cables? We're talking about hooking up a television, hooking up a HD TV, hooking up maybe a DVD player or a Blu-ray player or maybe your gaming system. And how come they all have different cables? Well, there's a specific reason for each of those cables and a specific purpose, and we're just kind of demystify that in this short episode of GTV How To. So when you're looking at those cables, first thing that comes into mind that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to kind of go up the spectrum here, is the coax cable. That coax cable, it comes from your cable, of course. It comes from Comcast for you watching right now at home, and it goes into the box. So it'll go into your cable box, into your modem if you have one of those. What a coax cable does is it actually can bring signals. So you can actually send information like they do for your modem, or they can send information and have it decode with your cable box, and that's how that signal comes. It also is pretty good about embedding audio and video together on one, and that's all about insulation. In fact, when you're talking about all of these cables, something that keeps popping up is interference. So when you're dealing with an analog signal, which is just a straight out signal, there's no digital, there's no computerization to it, if you will. It's just a straight video or audio signal. What you need to do is you need to protect that signal from interference with other different things. If you take, and the best way to describe interference, I had a teacher once tell me this years ago in grade school, and it stuck with me. If you're out on a pond and you throw a rock into the pond, there's going to be all sorts of waves. There's going to be ripples from that rock that you throw in. Someone else throws in another one, there's going to be waves. And those waves are going to meet and they're going to cause interference. They're going to interfere with one another. Well, that's what we're trying to basically guard against with all these different kinds of cables. So that coax will come in and you can send audio and video over it. You can send information over it. And by the way, the word coax comes from co-axis. They have the same axis for those two different kinds of cables that are actually inside of it. And so that was way back when they first came up with these cables. So it stuck. So it's coaxial is what they call it, coax cable. It's a hard little copper wire that comes out of the end there. When you step up from that, the next thing that comes to mind is actually something called composite, or a lot of people call it an RCA cable. I've called it that for years myself. And that's the standard one. That's this. That's that yellow, red, and white. And those three cables there are three very different purposes, actually two very different purposes. This yellow cable here, that actually gives you the video. And if you deal with these two, it's going to be giving you the left and right channel. Right is red, by the way, in that one. So when you're dealing with these kind of cables, you have this one video cable, this yellow one, and that's actually sending all of your video information. So the reason that this is the low end of the totem pole is it can only send standard definition over this. And there's that interference that we're talking about. There really is a lot of mud when you get down to these kind of cables. What it does is it compresses a couple of different things. There's the luma and the chroma that comes through on video. Luma is black and white. So if you're going to get any definition out of your blacks, you're going to see a lot of good contrast out of that. And the chroma is the color. All of that just gets kind of jammed into this one little cable, and that's why you see the picture and it's not as good. But this was a standard for so long, and these cables have been around for so long. They're in a lot of different things. In fact, a lot of cameras still operate with a jack that comes out of the back of those. That's why I have this cable here. And that jack is it's a triple jack. And you can tell this is a video and audio jack because if you look at this, there's actually three rings on that. And that's because there's a ring for video, a ring for left, and a ring for the right channel of audio. So you have these RCA cables, or the composite cables, as they're actually called, and it's three of them, and you can't send audio over the video. So they're kind of going out of fashion, but still a lot of products use those. When you go up from there, the next step up is S-video. Now S-video is just by itself. So with S-video, you're still going to need this audio or some form of audio. So really, S-video only replaced this cable out of all this. So you still need some sort of setup where you're getting your audio coming through. But where S-video is different, if you look at an S-video cable, you can see that there's a bunch of little prongs in there. And what it is it actually takes and gets rid of some of the interference that happens between that luma and the chroma. So the black and white and color are actually separated out and they're shielded against one another, and this gives a better signal. So if you're dealing with standard definition, and both of these are still standard definition, S-video is superior to video, to this RCA, in a lot of ways, because it's going to take all that signal and split it up. Rather than just kind of crunching it down and compressing it into this one, you're going to be able to take that and separate it out. So it's a little bit better, but it's still only standard definition. So in the early part of the 2000s, what we started seeing is high definition coming into everything. Now Goffstown TV still doesn't operate in high definition, but much of this stuff is recorded in HD. In fact, this episode is being recorded completely in high definition video, and then we bring it back down to standard definition to broadcast it out, to cablecast it out to you. But the next thing that came along is component. Now these look very familiar. They're maybe a little bit different color, but the connection is actually the exact same as that RCA or composite. So composite and component get mixed up quite a bit because, well, it looks the same. In fact, these cables happen to connect to one another pretty easily, but they aren't the same. Instead of having, you know, a cable for video and then 2 cables for audio like this does, this actually has 3 cables for video. And the difference here is much like this, much like the S-video, where it takes the luma and the chroma. It actually separates the chroma into a couple of different formats there, and it further separates that out to protect it from interference from itself, really. And because of that, it's able to convert it on those televisions. This was really the first thing that came through for high definition. Because you could separate all those pieces of information out, this came in. You can also put standard definition on this, but this was the first that really dealt with high definition. In fact, you go look at some of the early high definition TVs. Some of those projection screen TVs are like 60-inch monsters that you see sometimes that were just massive. It takes 3 people to lift them up and move them. Those usually had some form of this in the back, a component where it was dealing with these 3 different video signals. So with this, you still need the audio. So you're not only adding a couple of cables for video, but you're still adding the audio cables up. So you're going to have 5 different things a lot of times plugging in there, and using that was a little bit cumbersome, which I think was part of the reason that it went away. And another part of the reason is because it's really all you can do with it is that. They just started shipping some items that actually use this as a digital format, but this is really the end of analog anything. What digital does is it digitizes it. It turns it into information rather than turning it into a straight signal. So back in the day when you didn't get any signal on your television and you were, I'm talking about this and coaxial days, basically you saw static, right? Now try and tell anybody under 12 years old what static is on a TV, and they won't understand, because if you don't get signal on your TV, what do you get today? You get blue. Blue is basically no information. So it's all or nothing when you're talking about digital. There's no in between. There's no just I kind of get it. You either get it or you don't, which has its definite advantages, but it also has some of disadvantages. But what really came into factor is around 2003 is HDMI. And you see this is one of our big monster HDMI cables. You see HDMI in just about everything today. My laptop has an HDMI out on it. Televisions sold today, just about all of them have HDMI, and if they don't, they really should. Your cable box might even have HDMI out on it, depending on what kind of television, what kind of service you have with Comcast. But what's interesting about it is HDMI, and we'll just kind of show this so you can see it. I'm sure you're all familiar with what that looks like. But HDMI, if you really look inside there, there's all sorts of little holes in there. And in those holes are different pins. If you look at the pinout on an HDMI, there's all sorts of different things that are being sent. There's video, there's audio, there's even a power one. You can power some things, though that really isn't something that people use a lot. And it's fantastic for consumer products because you're getting high definition, you embed the audio. So this one cable replaced 5 cables when it came about. So you can see why it was adopted pretty quickly. It took a while for this to come through, though, because all those companies, think of everybody who makes TVs and all those sort of things, they all had to agree on a format. And boy, you talk about bureaucracy is when they have to agree on anything. Think of USB ports. USB ports, you know, you plug in a thumb drive. Why can't you turn it the other way? Well, actually, the next generation of USB ports, they will be able to do that. But that's generation 4. It took 4 times for them to figure out that, hey, when we put it in and we don't connect it, we have to flip it the other way. And you're probably like me. I've actually flipped it and then realized I had it right the first time and stuck it in again. That happens to the best of us. There are some limitations to HDMI. This happens to be an extremely long HDMI cable, but you get about, I think it's 15 meters or something like that is the absolute most you'll get out of an HDMI cable. But about 15 feet is really as far as you generally want to push it. Some 25-foot cables are out there that work perfectly well. There's even 50 and 100-foot HDMI cables out there. But you're going to actually experience signal loss. And we were talking there a little bit ago about digital. You don't want signal loss on digital because it's blue or it's on. It's all or nothing. So that's just a little bit about cabling and why there are so many different versions out there. Eventually what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of all those and we're just going to have stuff like this. And then, of course, they'll change it all up and we'll have to do Ultra HD. And maybe they'll figure out something else. Though for the time being, this also carries that. The next generation of high definition actually goes over HDMI. So, whew, at least until they decide on something else. Well, this has been one pretty quick episode here of GTV How To. Just wanted to go over a little bit of cabling with you. If you have any questions about anything related to video, especially on how you can produce a television show for residents of Goffstown and beyond, because it is your show, you can put it on YouTube just like we do. All you got to do is contact us, and we are located at the back of Goffstown High School. Our taping hours for public shows in this studio are Tuesday through Thursday from about 4 o'clock to 9 p.m. And you have any questions, certainly give me a call. My name is Adam McCune. I'm the GTV coordinator. Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTV How To, and we hope to see you down at the studio sometime soon.